Hey everybody, this is Perch. I'm going to read this mail. We're going to do this anti-drama. So I'm going to read the mail, but we'll omit the names for the protection of the innocent. And by this, I mean me. Anyway, here we go. It says, hey Perch, curious to get your take on this. On a recent live stream, a comic creator, including comic creator, discussed that he doesn't want to waste time bagging and boarding the comics because it is a massive time suck to do so. I'm curious, what's your take on this? I think I heard you say at one point that at your shop, you bagged and boarded for pull box customers. What is the necessity for bagging and boarding? I myself have ordered several comics from crowdfunded campaigns. About 1/3 of them bagged and boarded the comic. The 1/3 of them bagged and boarded the comic. The rest were just left loose. To be fair, none of the comics that were left loose sustained significant damage. However, I did like the comic coming bagged and boarded and thought that was a nice touch that made me feel better about the creator. Okay. What do you think? Is bagging and boarding a requirement for crowdfunding? All right. So a couple of people sent me this clip or this moment from a live stream. The person was talking about, bagging and boarding being a waste of time. Or not a waste. Well, yeah, a waste of time. Basically, that was a heavy time suck. And in my view, it's a little bit of it's not buyer beware. It's buyer be informed, I guess. To me, I think the ethical right thing to do is for when there's a crowdfunding campaign, just describe a little bit how this comic is going to be shipped. Is it going to come back board? Is it going to come wrapped? For some people, that legitimately is a big deal. I acknowledge completely bagging and boarding is a time suck. And you're right. In my shop, I bagged and boarded the pull box customers stuff. I did this for kind of, and by the way, at one point during the shop, I bagged and boarded everything, including the stuff on the shelf. Why did I do that? Well, for one, quite bluntly, to try and have a competitive advantage against the everybody else. Other shops weren't doing that, and my store did, and it was, from a cost perspective, minus the time, which we'll get to in a minute. For a cost perspective, it was cheap and effective, and it was a differentiator, and people did come to the shop because of that, and so financially it worked out. Another reason that I think is more practical, that believe it or not is a big deal, is I found that when I bagged and boarded the comics for the shelf, my comics were in a dramatically better, state 3 weeks on. So what happens is, and you've probably seen it yourself, you go into a comic shop, there's comics there in the rack, and, you're going to buy one. And most of you, I'm guessing, if you're buying something off the wall, you kind of go back 3 or 4 comics in the stack that's there, and you kind of carefully pull one out because you want one that, is not on the front, doesn't have the bar, the rope, or whatever's holding it to the wall there. And it was better. It was just better. The books are in better quality. From a retailer perspective, you had fewer kind of bent up copies, things that, the collectors are not going to buy. And if you're making an assumption that some of the stuff you have on the wall is going to go into your bin, not a quarter bin, but back issue bin, that this is going to be, it's going to keep the value higher. You're going to be able to sell it more. Comics, and I'm sure you all have seen this, depending on how the shelf is, they'll get those 2 points of bend on the spine, usually around the staple, where whatever mechanism that was holding it onto that shelf kind of causes it to bend as people pull the comic. And by the way, if you've ever been a retailer and you've sat behind the counter and watched people go up to the shelf and then kind of very crudely pull the front comic, toward them, and while they pull one out of the back, thus ruining, the first couple comics in that stack, you always you get that Kill Bill sound in your head where you just would love to just reach across that counter and pop somebody right in the mouth. That absolutely, they're intentionally damaging the inventory. They know they're doing this because they're reaching toward the back of the stack to get the comic they want. So therefore, they know what they're doing. Always drove me insane as a retailer. Absolutely insane. No, I never jumped across the counter and popped somebody in the mouth. That would be, that's a ticket to jail, or at least a big fine. So no, but it was a problem. But generally, I found it pragmatic to bag and board. It was better to do so. It was competitive advantage. People liked it, everything else. Now, elephant in the room? Yeah. Yeah, it's a big ass time suck for sure. It was lousy to to spend hours and hours and hours bagging and boarding these books. And one of the things I did was I had people who are younger, not kids, but people who are junior high school who would want to come in, and they wanted money, and I didn't want to give them money because I was trying to keep all the money. And so part of the thing I've said is like, hey, bag and board for an hour, and I'll give you a couple comics for free. Basically, I'm going to trade labor for comics. So therefore, no taxes, no payroll, none of that kind of stuff. And, you help me bag and board, you get some comics out of the mix. So I basically got child labor to do this job. It's a way of the capitalist world, man. Child labor helps you out every time. For crowdfunded, people who are doing these books, let's say you have, I don't know, 1,000 books you got to put in the mail. It's a time suck. Now, I did it for Gemini Jump, and I've done it for a couple other people that I've helped. I don't know. There's a certain relaxation. It's one of the things my wife and I have in common. We, it's relaxing for us somehow to just put them in the book, particularly if you're being careful. When you're trying to slide the comic in, you don't want your fingerprints on the cover or anything, so you're holding it kind of in the palm of your hand, you're slipping it in. There's slipping it in. Anyway, there's a certain kind of almost zen-like quality you get into doing this stuff. So I enjoy it. But an easy, barely an inconvenience option for people who are doing crowdfunding is this is an absolute TaskRabbit type job. And I know I've got a couple friends, and I recommended this, and it has been successful. You say bag and board comics, put out the gig, TaskRabbit, $50. Somebody will come over to your house and bag and board the shit out of these things for hours, and there you go. That's the right answer. Now, granted, if you're a big crowdfunding campaign, it's cutting into your margin. I get it and everything else, but it's up to you. Look, it's. I don't think it's like I'm standing on a mountain with my tablets like thou shalt always bag and board a comic. I think that's kind of absurd. It's up to the person selling the comic. If this is it's up to the service and the value you provide. To me, I think it is a competitive differentiator. That's why I did it. I would recommend people who do crowdfunding campaigns to do it because it does set you apart. But acknowledge is it a time suck? People are getting really pissy at this guy because I think it's probably the way he said it. It was kind of in a smarmy kind of way, but it's truth. It is a time suck for sure. Like it's obviously a investment of energy for what feels like a pretty simple, benign thing. But it will set you apart. And, I appreciate the person who wrote in saying, their comics have been received tip-top shape. Great. But, the reason why people bag and board is because, fundamentally, it protects the comic. And I would argue, because with Gemini Jump, I know a couple comics arrived screwed up. So I don't know if you saw those videos. I mean, I bagged it, boarded it, put a little styrofoam thing in there to hold it in place, put it in a box. Like it was designed to, keep it in good shape. But even there, we have a couple people from the post office, deliver this thing and kind of ram the F out of this box through somebody's, postal hole, to ram it through the hole. Okay, sorry, I'll stop doing that. Anyway, sure, there's certain things that just, the damage is going to occur with the mailing system because those people are all pissed off that their job is going away. So slowly but surely. So I think that, if you have had to deal with a return and every single person who told me, hey, the comic is in bad shape, sight unseen, there's guys like offering to send it back and all that. I'm like, no, just, I didn't even ask for proof. There were definitely some people who've been scamming the hell out of it for me, but I'm like, hey, no problem. Send it right back to you. I threw another one in the mail, easy. But the time investment in making it right for a damaged comic, it's put it this way. You get like 3 or 4 returns, you're starting to, that's starting to become equivalent to 50 to 100 comics that you're bagging and boarding. So it's where you want to spend your time. I think if you take a chance without your comics being shipped, the odds of it arriving all effed up pretty high. and then that time's going to hit one way or another. So it's where you want it, and I think you get better customer experience if you do it. But at the end of the day, whatever the crowdfunder, comic shop, whoever it happens to be, whatever you're doing, I think the right thing to do is at least to say what it is that you are doing. So if you're not going to bag and board it, in the campaign, it should say, it's going to arrive this way. And if you're a pull box customer, I think it's reasonable to tell the pull box people, how your comics are being stored. I remember I went to this like comic book shop nightmares. I went to this shop and the guy was asking for some help. And I was like, well, what would you do? And we looked at the pull box system, and the guy had like one of those little plastic shelves that you buy at like Walmart. And he had the comics. He had the comics there just with sticky notes. So the comics were just in a big ass pile. And then he had sticky notes as like dividers. So he took the sticky note, put the sticky note onto the cover of the comic, wrote somebody's name on it in pen, and they were just piled up there. And so when you went in to get your pull box, there was no pull or box. There was just a shelf. And it's like, oh, what's your name? Tim. And so he would like go to his shelf and like dig through the sticky notes until he found Tim. And then he'd just grab that stack and hand it to you. And that's just a big old load of bullshit right there. So I mean, that's don't do that. So I just think it's reasonable if you're providing a service to tell your customers kind of what it is you're up to, and hey, in defense, this particular comic creator said what he was doing. Like I don't bag and board because it's a waste of time, or it's a time suck. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, like nobody can. Nobody who's hearing that is like, I was deceived. I didn't get my comic bag boarded. Like, well, if the guy told you he was going to do, it's up to you. Anyway, we got through that whole video very drama free. And so there you have it. No need for a 5-hour live stream on whatever Perch is doing. But now and knowing is half the battle. Thanks for listening.